Welcome to the Academy of General Dentistry podcast series featuring Dr. George Schmidt. Each episode features experts in the field of dentistry who share insights and inspiration to help you succeed. Let's get started.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. We're recording live here at AGD2026 in Las Vegas, Nevada, at another amazing scientific session. And I want to welcome my special guest and good friend, Dr. Grobmyer. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on the program. And, you have such for those that don't know, you're involved with, or your product is Practice Booster.
That's correct.
But you've got before we get into that, tell us a little bit of your story about how you got involved.
Absolutely. So, I'm doing what Dr. Charles Blair kind of used to do. That's what Practice Booster is, but it was kind of a long and winding story. I was a clinically practicing dentist for over a decade. Went through a cancer battle when I was 36. I ended up going into the doctor, finding out I had colon cancer, and big surprise, I'd been in getting checked for acid reflux and found out I was anemic and led one thing to the other. And so through the course of the chemo treatments and things, I ended up with peripheral neuropathy. I had numb fingers, numb feet. Can't do all the little fine stuff that I used to do. So I kind of stepped out and did coaching and consulting for a while, wrote a lot for the dental industry, and that writing led me to being the ghostwriter of the Dental Coding with Confidence manual with Dr. Blair. And so he was looking for some content creation. And that's what I provided. And then as he kind of got a little more where he couldn't travel as much and was aging out, I've kind of stepped into the role that he had previously. So it's been a blessing. It's been a good thing. And so it kind of fell into my lap a little bit. A lot of it's who you know, but this is a perfect fit for kind of my skill set. I love writing. I love connection. I love speaking. I get to do a podcast myself.
I know you do.
Webinars and consultations and speaking at all these dental meetings around the country. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it keeps you busy, right?
It does. Between that and I rewrite the Dental Code and Confidence manual every single year.
Wow.
And so it's 560 pages of book. And this year for 2026, we had 60 changes. We've got 67 coming next year. And so I have to write new entries for all that stuff, but also revise all the other entries as to how these changes affect things. And so we have a product that's a great reference manual for how things, not only how should you code correctly to differentiate between one and the other, but also how to maximize your reimbursements, how to make sure that all the stuff is in your documentation that's keeping you audit compliant, making sure you're playing by the rules, that you're maximizing what your reimbursements are because you're coding comprehensively. And so all that's in there. We get to talk about all the third-party payer stuff that ADA really doesn't get to talk about in the resources. So we can talk narratives and images and what all needs to go into the clinical note to make sure that the keywords are there for the AI to pick up on. We discuss all that. And so that's great for resources. And then you were talking about staying busy. Most of what I do when I'm not on the road speaking, I am doing one-on-one consultations with practices.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
I actually do kind of a code audit. I get a production report from the previous calendar year. I look to see what codes are being utilized and to what level. I look at the fees that you currently have. I'll do a fee revision suggestion. We use multiple fee data sets. We've got our own proprietary data as well. So I can kind of customize a fee suggestion. And then I do 3 hours on Zoom coaching the team. How do you document this? How do you properly report this? How do you robustly not only put things in the documentation for a legal perspective, but also just to get your claim paid? If the right stuff is not in the chart, it can't go in the narrative and the claim doesn't get paid.
I know how important your book is and all the work that you do, because especially for some of our younger members that don't know, it's so important to have things and properly code and have the narrative there to be able to support that. But I did not know that you were doing those private consults. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's called revenue enhancement. It's got the biggest ROI of almost anything in dentistry. I can tell you. When we go into a practice, I'm normally seeing between a 40 and or 20 and a 40x ROI on that. And that's That's big.
That's
That's
amazing.
big.
That's huge.
And it's sometimes much more than that. And so, and it's just about making sure the fees are where they're supposed to be, making sure that everything is being reported that could be reported or should be reported. CDT codes you can't just play around with. It's a legal statement
Mm-hmm.
of the service provided, and you've got to meet all the criteria of it. You can't just change a code because this is the one that gets paid. You have to report the service you actually performed, and it's got to be the provider that was actually the one that was doing it, not somebody else. There's so many rules, and they're constantly changing.
Yeah.
And so it's a full-time job for me. It's job security. I can tell you that.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know how I got suckered into this, but here I am. And so I'm the guy that I don't know that anybody else does what we do specifically outside of ADA themselves.
Yeah.
And we kind of try to bridge between ADA and payers and dentists.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing an amazing work, and it's not like the old days when I started in dentistry. You could basically do the procedure and maybe send in a radiograph and get paid.
Right.
It's not like that anymore. So tell us the very basic you need for a submission, a claim submission.
Claim submission has got to be one basic principle that dentists don't seem to kind of get is that just because a patient has a clinical need for a procedure, it doesn't mean that it qualifies for benefits. An insurance plan is created by either the insurance company or the employer, depending on what type of plan it is, fully insured or self-funded, different types of plans. But you've got some guys in some smoky boardroom somewhere that are sitting together and they're creating a package that's like, okay, we'll cover these things, but only under these circumstances. And then, there are plans out there that have $10,000 a year annual maxes, and they cover cosmetics and they cover veneers, and they're so expensive no one buys them.
Yeah.
And so we hear over and over again, I hear people complain, well, that max is the same since 1960 or whatever it is. That's because that's the plan that the employers can generally afford to buy. That's the package deal. They've got higher max plans, but they're so expensive, they're not financially viable for the employers to choose.
Right.
So the employees are choosing a plan that they can afford to offer to their employees. And so to make it affordable, they have to put cost containment measures in there. So that's where all those stinking rules come from, those exclusions, the specific criteria. And so just because a patient needs a crown doesn't necessarily mean that they qualify under the rules of that plan for reimbursement. They still need the clinical crown, okay? But most of the plans say they don't pay for situations of abfraction, attrition, erosion, gritting and grinding of teeth. They're not going to cover a crown for that. They're not going to cover a crown if it's just cracks confined to the enamel, which is defined by really, is it symptomatic or not? You got to have a positive cracked tooth syndrome unless there's a big chunk of tooth.
And you need to document that.
And you got to document it. And there's a new code for testing for cracked tooth syndrome. Practices don't know. There's new codes every single year. They take away codes, and then they also revise the meaning of existing codes a lot of times. So something you're coding today means maybe slightly different than what it meant last year. And if you don't know what the change is, if you're not up with that, you may be misusing a code.
Yeah.
Or there may be some other code that's a better fit.
You've really got to stay on top of it.
You've got to stay on top of it. So that's my job, is kind of evangelize this, to get out there and teach it and preach it and kind of tell, okay, here's the language that needs to be here. Here's the images that need to be taken.
Yeah.
This is the difference between this code and that one. There's 40 different implant crown codes. Yeah. Most practices use one over and over and over again. But if a material changes or they're using a different type of, there's different codes.
Yeah.
And you got a code for what, if you're ever audited, they can nail you to the wall if you're not coding for actually what happened.
Well, not only that, if your claims get rejected, as we all know, that comes into the bottom line if you've got to spend months and months and months trying to get reimbursed.
Absolutely.
For your claim. But
and it's an uphill battle. And those documentation requirements are just getting stricter and stricter and stricter over time. And so that's you can agree with it or not. I mean, the procedure should be medically justified, but there does become a point where it becomes this burden to
Yeah.
where it's working against. And ADA is trying really hard, I know, and AGD also with their involvement in these types of things, trying to help dentists, help them with resources, help them uh, federally. The only people that can control an insurance company, it's not a dentist organization, it's the federal government. We've there's people campaigning for law changes,
Yeah.
but AGD, ADA, they can't police what a third party payer does. That's an independent company. They've got to play by the rules of the government, but they don't have the ability to say
Yeah.
don't do that, finger wag. They can condemn it, but
Yeah.
you got to play by the rules.
Well, thank you for that. And of course, it's a fantastic resource. And make sure we'll get your contact information before you
I
go.
appreciate that.
So a couple of things before we close. So I know you're a writer, you're an educator, you travel all over. You're doing such a great service. You review all the codes. But someone, Dr. Bruce Cassis, just told me that you're also a stand-up comedian. So you got to tell me about
That's
that.
okay. Yes, this keeps coming up, and it's in my bio, so it's not
Okay.
something I'm hiding.
Okay.
But when I first came off of my cancer diagnosis and survived all that, that's pretty upsetting. The apple
I
cart,
I
right?
would think so. Yeah.
I had uh, student loans I'm still paying for a job I could no longer do, and so at that point, it's do you laugh or do you cry? And so I had a friend who challenged me for a little open mic night thing, and I was at the point in my life was like, I'm saying yes to everything. I'm rising above this. I can't wallow, and so I took that and went and did this thing, and there was somebody in the audience that was uh, uh, you could call them a recruiter, but they were, they're out looking for people to do this, and came up afterwards and was like, have you ever thought about doing this for real?
Yeah.
And so I began opening for acts, the
Oh,
traveling acts. And
that's
so
great.
worked at a local club for a long time, about 3 years.
Yeah.
I didn't do that as a living. I didn't do that. I didn't travel the country or anything, but it was fun, and got to be creative. I got to use my writing skills, my speaking skills. And I tell you what, if I can handle a heckler in Jackson, Tennessee, that's half drunk, I can handle any speaking engagement that you might throw me in, and I'll take the audience and walk away with a good experience.
Oh my
regardless.
gosh, there's no question about that. And I've known you for some time, and I did not know that. Maybe I should have known that. And there's something about I know three dental comedians now: Jeff Gurian,
Yep.
Galler,
Yep.
Grobmyer, all G's.
There you go. Hey, there's something to that.
I think there might be something to that. That's
There we
good
go.
stuff.
There we go. That's awesome.
Share your contact information with our audience.
I certainly will. Our website is dentalcoding.com. So pretty easy to find there. My personal email, our company is called Practice Booster. And so my email is greg@practicebooster.com. And so the practicebooster.com domain now just kind of forwards to dentalcoding.com. But everything you need to know, it's there on the website. You can hunt us up, all our consulting services there.
Okay,
The
good.
store, the books, the resources. There is an AGD show discount code
Okay, thank you.
for the books, AGD10. If you're entering that promo code when you purchase the book, and that's going to get you 10% off for the show. There are some bundles on there of books also that already have a 15% discount, and so there's not a double dipping. So you may not see it show up if you're going that route. But also our consulting services. We'd love to talk to you about that. That's, like I said, that's got one of the biggest ROIs, in my opinion, in dentistry.
No question about it.
Learn how to code, learn how to do it right, learn how to maximize reimbursement, documentation, getting it to flow. Play by the rules. Don't play in the gray area. Don't be making stuff up and sneaking stuff around insurances. It only comes back to bite you. I can tell you. Work with a lot of companies on the south end of an audit, and it's not fun.
It's not a good place. It's not a good place to be. Thanks so much for coming by. I know your booth is really busy. This booth is packed here, and thanks for taking a few minutes to step away and chat with us here. But thanks so much for coming on the program.
Man, it's always a pleasure talking to you, George. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also like to thank our producer, Kristen Gover. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe to our channel. You can always find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and of course the AGD app. and on YouTube at General Dentistry. If you have any questions, concerns, or comments, you can send them to news@agd.org. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.